call, please.
Alderman Kirkowski.
Here.
Lorik.
Here.
Dukenyak.
Here.
Toman.
Here.
Gale.
Here.
Guzekowski.
Here.
Can we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? We have a veteran with us tonight. No? Mike Simmons, how about leading us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody had a chance to review the minutes of August 15th. Any questions, corrections?
Guzekowski will make a motion to approve the minutes of August 15th, 2017. I will second.
Roll call.
Alderman Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye. Our first public hearing is to consider a request by Daniel Zemer to rezone a property at 9838 South Chicago Road from RS3 Single Family Residential and A1 Limited Agricultural to A1 Limited Agricultural. Doug, are you handling the, I'm sorry, Catherine?
Public hearing number 1 is to consider a request by Daniel Ziesmeyer to rezone the property at 9838 South Chicago Road from RS3 Single Family Residential and A1 Limited Agricultural to A1 Limited Agricultural. Applicant is Daniel Ziesmeyer. Property owner is Ann and Daniel Ziesmeyer. There follows the legal description. Date of notice is August 10th, 2017.
Thank you, Catherine. As a
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Doug Seymour. I'm the Director of Community Development for the city, and this is a public hearing and a request to rezone the property at 9838 South Chicago Road from RS3 Single Family and A1 Limited Agricultural to the entire property A1 Limited Agricultural. So as I mentioned, the majority of this property is already zoned A1, except for the former single family dwelling, which has been removed, and just under 1 acre of the lot, which is in the RS3 Single Family Zoning District. The applicant, by virtue of this action, wishes to construct a new single-family dwelling with an accessory agricultural outbuilding and to utilize the property for agricultural purposes. The surrounding properties are zoned residential, agricultural, and commercial. The comprehensive plan shows this area as planned mixed use, which does allow for a mix of different zonings. This being a public hearing, there will be a call for public comments. If you wish to ask a question or a comment on this proposed rezoning, please fill out an appearance form, submit that to the city clerk. Once your name is called, please proceed to the podium to address the council with your comment and or question. This public hearing is now open.
Thank you, Doug. As Doug said, we will make 3 calls. This is the first call. Second call. Third and final call. Okay, we will now close the public hearing. We'll move on to consideration of ordinance 2864, an ordinance to rezone the property at 9838 South Chicago Road from RS3 Single Family Residential and A1 Limited Agricultural to A1 Limited Agricultural. I will open it up to the council for questions or comments. Ken?
Doug, you've probably been here long enough to know. I see from the comprehensive plan, it was identified as planned mixed use. Is that a likely successor after we go through our renewals? Are going to be residential designation?
As we further refine what happens in the Lake Vista area and the eastern part of the city, there might be some more refinement to that land use category. Although I suspect you're correct that some of those properties, as you get a little bit further south of State Highway 100, may actually show a residential designation.
Anyone else? No, seeing none. Motion?
Someone will make a motion to adopt ordinance number 2864 and an ordinance to rezone the property at 9838 South Chicago Road from RS3 Single Family Residential and A1 Limited Agriculture to A1 Limited Agriculture District.
Oracle second.
Roll call.
Alderman Dukniak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Next, we have consideration for a conditional use by Lori Kopecki, U.S. Cell Operating Company, LLC, for a conditional use permit allowing a 120-foot monopole with a 6-foot lightning rod for a total footage of 126 feet and apparatus in a gated and fenced compound on the property at 2330 East Rawson. Catherine.
Public hearing number 2 is to consider a request by Lori Kopecki, U.S. Cellular Operating Company, LLC, for a conditional use permit allowing a 120-foot tall monopole with a 6-foot tall lightning rod. Total height equals to 126 feet, and apparatuses in a gated and fenced compound on the property at 2330 East Ruston Avenue. Applicant is Lori Kopecki, U.S. Cellular Operating Company, LLC. Property owner is Roger and Judy Foray Trust. Legal description is as follows. Date of notice is August 10th, 2017.
Doug?
Thank you. So wireless communications facilities are conditional uses in the city of Oak Creek in our zoning code. And you do have a copy of that section of the code included for your reference. Where things start to get a little tricky is that the state of Wisconsin recently enacted legislation which severely limits the local control of local levels of government with respect to controlling its own land use when mobile telecommunications facilities are involved. This is not something that's unique to Oak Creek. You've no doubt seen it or heard it in Franklin, Greendale, elsewhere. Probably won't be the last time you see that. And without editorializing too much, I think it just speaks to the frustration that is evident when local government decisions are not allowed to be made at the local government level. And taking those decisions out of the hands of the elected officials is questionable public policy, but I'll leave it at that. U.S. Cellular would construct a tower and equipment enclosure, again on the northwest corner of that property, which is owned by the Roger and Judith 4-H Trust, currently the site of an automotive service facility. A more detailed review of the plans would be completed by the Plan Commission per the attached conditions and restrictions. Mentioned earlier about the state statutes. Essentially, the state statute prohibits a local government from enacting an ordinance or enforcing an ordinance that existed, which is our case, where there are specific conflicts with the state statute in that regard. So even though, for instance, our telecommunications ordinance would require a setback equal to the height of the tower, or we have some co-location alternatives or preferences, anything that is in direct conflict with the language in the state statute is not enforceable. We discussed that a great deal at the Plan Commission, and I suspect there'll be some additional discussion about that this evening. But having said that, where there are no conflicts with the state statute, the city can and will enforce its ordinance. And that would happen at the site plan review level as part of the conditional use permit. So despite the neighborhood concerns that we heard at the Plan Commission meeting, despite some misgivings during our staff review of the proposal, the fact remains nonetheless that the use is permitted by state statute, and the Plan Commission in its review has recommended approval of the proposed conditional use permit subject to the attached conditions and restrictions. Again, this is a public hearing. Anyone with any questions or comments regarding the proposed conditional use permit for the 120-foot tall wireless communications monopole, please submit a comment form to the city clerk. Once your name is called, please proceed to the podium to address your comment and or question to the Common Council. This public hearing is now open.
Thank you, Doug. As Doug said, we will make 3 calls. First call. Name and address, please.
Nicole Hoshi, 2240 East Ash Court. Hi, everyone. So I am I guess, adjacent or next to the proposed cell phone tower. I've been here for every single meeting and have brought up my concerns, so many of you are aware of that already, and it's on the record. And I guess I just want to go back to kind of last week and get some follow-up for some questions that I had brought up regarding the fence. I know we had talked about that, so I just kind of wanted to get some confirmation that it is not going to be any razor wire or anything like that. I know we had discussed the landscaping as well. And then I also wanted to bring up the location. So I know we had talked about other potential locations and just kind of why it has to be right in this area, and if there were other areas right around that corner of Rawson and Pennsylvania that were discussed or looked at, and then why this area was chosen over those areas. So for now,
Thank you. Can we invite the applicant up, maybe to take care of those questions and kind of detail us in on the project, and then if anybody else has any other questions, we'll call you up if needed. Name and address, please.
Richard Rogers, 100 West Henry Clay Street, Whitefish Bay, Wisconsin. We discussed at length relocation looking for another location at, I think, the original Public Hearing Plan Commission. This is what's called a capacity site, which ties in with the existing network. With the advent of texting, sending documents, sending photographs, et cetera, the present system is maxed out. We need these relay sites around to provide the coverage that the FCC demands that we provide anywhere we're licensed. To give you an example, there's about 15 of these sites in and around the city of Milwaukee, Oak Creek, Franklin, we're also Franksville, and in Milwaukee and Brookfield. So these are capacity sites because it's a much more greater demand on the network to send data and to send texting than it is just telephony, a voice system. The network was fine, worked well just with phones. It doesn't work well with all the data it's sending. Getting back, that answers the one question. The second question was the fence. Carrie, the planner suggested, I think the Plan Commission suggested we do a vinyl slatted 10-foot fence in lieu of the 8-foot with the barbed wire on it, which we submitted those plans to her, I think, about a week ago, and is part of our most recent site plan.
Okay. Just, can you stay up there, please, sir? Mr. Rogers, did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay. Sounds kind of odd. No offense. Just
No relation to Aaron. I wish he was, but cousin Aaron.
I think specifically when we were at the Plan Commission, she was wondering if you considered other locations nearby in the Oak Creek area or South Milwaukee area.
Yes.
Other than this particular site, and can you elaborate on where they were?
One, there were actually 5 locations that I chose that were possible. What we do is give the lat longs, the RF engineers tie it in with the existing network, which one is going to work best and which ones don't work. The search ring, as in your packet, was very small. Typically, when you're building a network, you have a much larger search area. In this case, because it is a capacity site, it has to be pretty well pinpointed. Because if this site were to move, say, for instance, a half mile, then the 3 or 4 sites it's connected to would also have to move the same distance because it is line of sight technology.
Okay. I believe we got to the fence and landscape issues. Did you talk to Carrie about landscape?
She just said, had we proposed any landscape? We hadn't, but we initially said in our application that if the Plan Commission recommended landscaping, we would do it. We just don't know what's being recommended at this point.
Okay.
So
Yes, it will be required.
we typically do arborvitaes, but every community is different. You might not like arborvitaes. So
Okay.
whatever the Plan Commission recommends, we will comply with.
Thank you. I think we covered the questions. I'll now make the second call. Third and final call. Come on up, Ms. Hoshi. No, I think we got you.
You know me, right? No, I guess I just want to say, you know, I feel like the cell phone tower process, it happens, I want to say, and I'm just kind of making a generalization based on my previous visits here, I don't know, whatever. And it seems like it's based off of commercial, not necessarily commercial, but more industrial areas, you know, especially with like the fencing and that, and just kind of the lingo and where things are, and the I guess lack of concern about residential area based on US Cellular's end. You know, I just want to make sure it gets taken into account that this is a residential area and it's in a really open area of Oak Creek. I mean, people drive by there a lot. And, you know, to have this big, huge cell phone tower with this big, huge fence, and then, you know, it's just quite frankly kind of ugly, you know? So, you know, you drive down on Howell and, you know, you see the other cell phone towers, and it's not a big deal. I mean, I looked at the fencing and you see it's the regular fencing with the barbed wire fence, and you don't even think twice about it because it is in an industrial area and it's kind of the norm there. But this is not. This is something, and this is in a different area than I feel like the cell towers usually are in. I just, guys, I wanted to have that taken into account, that, you know, to have that extra, you know, if we can disguise the tower or something, you know, and just make it look nice, because I live there. I mean, I have to look at it every single day. It towers over the trees, and it's, like I said before, it's right next to a preserved wetlands area. So anything that can be taken into account with landscaping and visual things would be greatly appreciated, because it is residential.
Great,
Thank you.
Third and final. That was the third. If there is nobody else, we'll close the public hearing. Okay. Totally lost track of myself there on the second and third count. We'll move on to consider ordinance 2865, approving a conditional use permit for a 120-foot wireless telecommunication monopole with a 6-foot lightning rod and associated equipment at the property at 2330 East Rawson. Open it up to questions, comments from the commission. Mayor. Steve.
I have a question for Mr. Rogers. If you could come back up, please. Sir, if the ideal spot that U.S. Cellular has identified as being right there at that location, right there, that Latin long, that spot on our Earth, how big of a variance from that spot would you'd still get the optimal performance that U.S. Cellular expects? I mean, how far away from that dot can you go with that tower? I mean, there has to be some variance in there somewhere.
Well, to answer your question, sir, it is the optimal location. Everything that's, it's not the optical, nothing is perfect, but it's as close as we can get to perfect without being right in the middle of a residential district.
Okay.
It's zoned residential.
So, if it's not the perfect location, but it's as close to perfect as you can get, without going north, a little bit west into a residential area, then you potentially, from what I hear you say, you could potentially go a little bit southwest into the business area where the Piggly Wiggly property is located. There's no spot there that cell phone tower
you have
would
to have a
work.
willing landlord also. I mean, we can't just go where we want to. We have to have an agreement. I spoke to probably, I'm guessing 8 to 10 different property owners.
Mm-hmm.
And
Including the property owner at where Piggly Wiggly and the other stores are located?
that particular location will not work. That was checked from an RS standpoint. Yes, the radio frequency engineers checked that out. We prefer to go in areas like that if we can, or high structures if we can. We don't like to spend, $500,000 building a tower if we don't have to, but we don't have any choice in this case. Like I said, if we move too far, then 2 or 3 other sites have to move also.
Well, I think we're the ones that don't have any choice, so I'm trying to understand that you said that's not the perfect spot, it's not the optimal spot without going into a residential area which tells me
Which
you
would
could
mean
go
north
you
or
could go
northwest.
into
No,
you
we
could
would
go
have to go
south.
north or northwest.
You would have to go northwest. You
Yes.
could not go south
No.
southwest
No, that
without
would,
affecting other sites.
right.
But it's still not the optimal spot.
Well, like I said, nothing's perfect. It's as close as we can get without going in someone's
You
backyard.
could use the same argument going southwest a little bit. It's not the
Well,
optimal spot, but it's as close as you can
The
get.
point is, if you're trying to reach 100%, we didn't reach it. But we also don't want to put up a tower that's only 50% efficient, because 3 or 4 years down the road, we're going to have to put another one up. So, we're trying to accommodate the needs of our clients and the public at where we're at.
And I'm trying to accommodate the
I understand that,
wants and
sir.
wishes of the people that have contacted me, and not one of them likes this idea. And the problem is we're hamstrung by the state, where you can come in and basically put a tower wherever you want to, and we don't have anything to really say about it. So I personally think if it isn't the optimal spot where it's located, you could, which means it's less than optimal where it is now, it would be less than optimal a little bit southwest.
Much
You'd
more,
still-
less than optimal, yes.
Well, it's
And-
less.
I mean, it's simply, like I said, I looked at somewhere between 8 and 10 locations, and there were only, this was the one that the radio frequency engineers chose. And
You have
from,
have you ever provided any of us a list of the 8 or 10 other locations?
No, we provided the coverage maps that it would obtain, or that would, our coverage for this particular area.
Did any of the other 8 or 10 locations involve commercial properties that aren't so close to residential areas?
I did that so long ago. I think, well, I mean, I basically went to commercial properties, right, or municipal properties, and there were none available right in this area where we had to be. And thinking that it was a service station with, right now, I think the fence around the area that we're putting our equipment is going to look much better than it does at the point right now. There's some old tires and junk in there right now, so it's all going to be cleaned up.
You can put up a hog farm and build a big enough fence, and it would still look nice because the fence would hide the hogs.
It'd
We're
still
talking
smell.
about a 120-foot cell phone
Right.
tower here that you're not going to be able to hide.
Well, it's a 120-foot cell tower isn't going to be hidden anywhere for that matter, but
Well, being that you said that there's been 8 or 10 other locations that you looked at, and this is less than optimal, then I'm thinking that Southwest would be just as less than optimal. And you said 50%, but it could be only 90%. It could be 95%.
we're at about 95% now, and every 200 or 300 yards drops another 5%.
200 or 300 yards.
Yes,
Okay, so you might go down to 80% then, maybe.
probably a lot less than that. I mean, I'm not a radio frequency engineer, sir, so I can't speak for, exactly why they chose this, but this was one of the reasons, because it ties in with our existing network.
Well, maybe a radio frequency engineer should have come here tonight to answer our questions, at least my questions. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm done, thank you. As far as it being a first district item that I would normally make the motion for, since I'm not supporting it, I will not be making the motion.
Understood.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to comment? Chris?
I just want to point out that I too am opposed to it because it is a residential area. You can put it behind a gas station, but it's still, they have to wake up to it every day. Every time I see this building standing here on paper, I just continue, I think of the high school, what's going on right now, right there. So that's what they're going to have to look at now if this is voted in. That's just my opinion.
Anyone else? I was at Plan Commission. Residents did come in. They voiced their disconcerts with this. We understood it a lot. I think Steve said it best, and Doug, this is This is a result of what the state legislature has done to us, and we really don't have a lot of ways out of this. If we vote no, we stand to face a lawsuit, and that's probably not in the best interest of the taxpayers of this city, because we're going to lose. Because basically we're going to break state statute on that, and that's my opinion on that. I agree, it's a very dense residential area. I'm not an expert on where every one of these are within the city. I've dealt with a couple of them in the second district when they came through. There was quite a bit of angst from subdivisions that weren't even near as close to this, but at the time we could ask to have them painted blue or gray or whatever color we wanted. The pole is up now, and for lack of a better word, somebody said you just kind of get used to the aesthetics of it, and it kind of blends into the sky, much like the pictures depicted here. And I know they're just simulations with cut and paste, but they're much like streetlights, much taller. I'm not going to deny that, but it's a fact of the matter. I think Mr. Rogers kind of said it best. We all depend on technology. Our usage is what's demanding this. So I'm guilty of it, and I'm sure the younger generation is probably even more guilty of it, because I can't figure out data and video on my phone. But it's just what's going on, and it's going to be more and more needed. I can't say why they put it exactly where they did. I know when they put in the big pole at the city property, it was a major deal. It had to be like right there. I can't speak for this collector thing or whatever they got going on, but if that's where they say the coverage is needed, I guess I got to trust the engineers on that one to avoid. I'm sure they don't want to put it somewhere else and be 80% or 75% efficient, because it will demand another pole somewhere eventually, or an amplifier, or whatever they do. We probably haven't seen the end of this either as technology keeps going. So, although I don't like it, it just seems to be a fact of the matter. And at planning, I did support it based on those facts. So I will stick with that here. Anybody else? Ken?
Thanks, Mary. Just to reiterate the mayor's thoughts on, this is an issue to deal with at the state level. Unfortunately, it's beyond us at this point. And there's been some relatively influential legislators that have taken actually a very anti-local control stance on this particular issue. So they have really hamstrung us in terms of dealing with this with our residents and our local our local situations. And you should search those folks out and make sure that you voice your opinion to them in the future. That this may potentially change, but there has been some very, and it's not even overt. I mean, it's very anti-local control, and some very unfriendly language used in terms of dealing with cell phone tower construction at the local level. That's really not useful at all to our efforts.
Quick question. Do you know, just recently, I'm not sure, I think it's Greendale. I thought somebody else voted it down. Do you know where that's at right now?
I think you're
by
correct.
chance?
I think it was Greendale. And I think they did vote it down. And from here, I don't know what happens. I could defer to our city attorney to take a guess.
Sure. I can give an answer, not to go far afield from this matter before this council, but yes, there was a denial of that request. They are in litigation. So in terms of piggybacking off the mayor's comments, I would just indicate that the council has the discretion to approve or deny or do nothing. If we do nothing, it is deemed approved. Due to the passage of time, within 90 days of receipt of the complete application from the applicant. Piggybacking off Doug's comments, I think it is just that. We have strictly limited local control here with the change in the state law under the statutes under 66.0404. The bottom line is municipalities have traditionally had the authority under their local rule to regulate matters such as height, aesthetics, location for cell towers, things of that nature. We do not have that anymore under the statute. So in terms of that, I think that there was a robust discussion at Plan Commission. I see from the minutes as well that those are included in the packet here tonight. I would submit that if there are other questions about those pieces, and I think that there certainly is in the interest of the citizens, they've raised those concerns in terms of why aren't we regulating in those manners? I would say that the additional pieces are for coming back for site plan approval, certainly, and for a building permit. So those are pieces that we still have before us.
City Attorney Carl's, the do-nothing option, though, foregoes some of the other things that we still have the ability to regulate. So I think that's if that's true, that's important to the council to know. The do-nothing option, we do waive some of the things we still have a little handle on here with this. So
Yes.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
one additional.
Go ahead, Steve.
Mr. Rogers, I have here this airport south search ring map, which leads me to believe that that would be the search area that the tower is the optimal area for the tower. Okay. I should have this marked as defense exhibit number 1 probably. Because I'm looking at the corner where the tower is supposed to, or is requested to go, and it's at the bottom area of the search ring map. But also included in that circle would be the commercial property on the south side of Rawson Avenue where the Piggly Wiggly is at, which is an area that you said you never talked to. So potentially, if you were able to locate the tower within the circle, and that included the commercial property on the south side of Rawson, then it would still be in your area that you wanted it to
It may be. It's all dependent on the lat longs, and like I said, I'm not a radio frequency engineer.
Okay.
Why they said we don't want to go south, if anywhere we have to go north or northwest.
Okay. Thank you.
This is a preliminary search ring that I'm given, geographically and to look for sites. And there were a couple of sites, like I said, probably 3 to 4 that the landlords weren't interested in. They said, no, we plan an expansion or et cetera, et cetera. They weren't interested.
And so if it's at the bottom of the circle, so yes, I'd agree with you. It's probably less than optimal. So, but less than optimal is still a little bit further south across the street.
Well, but optimal would be a little bit north, right in someone's
Optimal would
backyard.
be north, but you couldn't get anywhere north, so you settled for this spot here.
According to the state law, we can go in someone's backyard if they allowed us.
Isn't that a wonderful
I know,
idea?
it's terrible. I don't agree with it either, sir. Don't believe me, I don't. But, I mean, I just thought.
I really don't agree with that.
I'm just
But
the
yes, you can
messenger.
go anywhere you want to, thanks to the
Right.
state. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. Alderman Gale?
Thanks, Mayor. Just for, I think, the council's edification of my own, I noticed, I looked on the aerial there, the railroad right away, and there's a power line that runs north-south there. I'd imagine, and the airport, I imagine, has height restrictions on property to the north and west there. Did that come into
Yes,
play in
there
some of
is.
your
Yeah,
decision-making?
yeah, we had to get FAA approval, obviously, yes.
And you can't, I imagine, power lines, you have to have a certain, you can't come close to those either.
No,
Yes.
no, we have, I believe it depends on the capacity of the power line, but it ranges from 50 feet to 150 feet.
And is your company ever dealt with a railroad in terms of siting on the right of way, or is that just?
Railroads do not allow us.
Start.
Nope, that's no. We've tried that in the past. I mean, we know that for
I
a
know they're
fact.
very uncooperative, but.
Right.
Greg?
Just one quick question. You mentioned that you need the property owner's permission, correct?
Oh, we have to have a
If,
lease.
I guess my question is if this I believe it's an auto shop,
Right.
if they denied you access there, did you have a secondary? Like, was there a backup? Or what happens if in the site ring, no landowner wants you on their land? What do you do then?
I guess the RF engineers would have to shift the whole network one way or the other, which has happened in the past.
Does that entail moving other towers?
Yes.
Like, okay.
Andrew or Melissa, if I can just get a clarification. So if, it seems as though none of us are willing to make the motion for the ordinance or conditional use to be approved. So if, again, is that do nothing position? And what are again, Andrew, that you said there are some downsides to taking that no action position. Can you clarify what those downsides are?
I defer to Melissa Carls on that, but I would, Doug mentioned a few, the landscaping, some of the other, the fencing, and my assumption is that if we lay this on the table and do nothing, the application becomes effectively approved, as Attorney Carl said, in 90 days, and you don't get a crack at those other things that you can regulate.
So then they could actually, they have the approval to put the pole up and do whatever they would like to with it, the dressing up around it. Okay.
I don't know that we've taken that to the extreme iteration of that scenario, but I think it's reasonable to expect that regardless of whether this council makes a motion or not, that a cell phone tower will be constructed on that property. And to the extent that you can work with the company, work with the neighborhood somewhat on some of the aesthetics of the equipment enclosure area, because you cannot regulate the aesthetics of the tower, but you can, for instance, our code does allow us, and I don't think there's anything in the state statute that says we can't regulate the aesthetics of the equipment enclosure or the landscaping. And we will avail ourselves of the opportunities that are afforded to us under our ordinance that are not conflicted with the state statute. And I think that would, if there were no action on the motion, or there no motion, I think that would certainly throw that process into jeopardy.
Could I interject, Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Rogers.
Just to make it clear, gentlemen and ladies, U.S. Cellular is not here to make any enemies or to defy the Plan Commission their right to put their conditions on us. We still have to get the conditional use permit and a building permit. I mean, we're not going to, if it's just table or what do you call it, no vote, we're not going to paint it purple or something just to tick some people off. I mean, we're trying to be good neighbors and provide a service, and we'll do the best, our efforts to do so. If that, whatever the planning department wants, the building department wants, we do this all over the country, and I don't think we've made too many enemies yet.
Well, I certainly appreciate that on behalf of the planning department, and we respectfully hope that all of the people who deal with, whether it's U.S. Cellular or a contractor for U.S. Cellular, would share that same sentiment and the cooperation with the planning staff and then the city. My experience on this project has that that's not always the case, and that certainly your cooperation is welcomed and is refreshing in the light of some of the lack of cooperation we receive from some of the other persons working on the project.
And I can address that also. I initially got this project in, I think, December 2016. I was diagnosed with cancer in March, and I didn't come back on the project till June. So there was a period of time when I was not involved.
Sorry to hear that. I hope you're doing well. Ms. Hoshi, last word for you before we put this up for a motion.
So I guess my question is, I know this is the fourth meeting about this, third, fourth. Thank you for bringing up that map. Is it too late to find out if Piggly Wiggly will allow to have that cell phone tower there? I mean, are we past the point of finding out if they would be willing to accept a cell phone tower? I mean, I've driven by there. My husband and I actually just did that a few weeks ago to see what it looked like back there, and it's literally a huge field. So I'm just wondering if it would be possible to review that site, if that's something that would be a possibility.
I cannot answer that.
I think that the short answer to that is this council, the city, does not have the authority to dictate placement of the cell phone tower. If they've got a willing property owner and a willing company to put up the tower, we cannot dictate where that goes. And I mean, and I certainly understand and respect your feelings about this issue, and I agree to a certain extent. But I think that, I mean, the movement of this to the south and west, it would not be a panacea by any means. It would defer and shift the impact of that towards other property owners.
Mayor, I think to answer her question a little bit more would be that U.S. Cellular would have to willingly find those radio frequency engineers to go over there and see if it would work, if they desire to do it.
And they may have done that, and maybe it wasn't an option. But I'm not going to speak for AT&T and elaborate on it, because what's in front of us is this site. So I think we should stick to this site, because that is what is in front of us. I just want to reiterate, you have something, Melissa?
I mean,
No, go
I
ahead.
would reiterate to this council, what I was speaking to before is statutorily, I was indicating in terms of what the statute provides, in terms of options, I would say that yes, as our city administrator pointed out, with the statute says, within 90 days of its receipt of a complete application, a political subdivision shall complete all of the following, or the applicant may consider the application approved. I think that that is our least desirable outcome in terms of what has been spoken to tonight. But as part of that, a political subdivision may disapprove an application if an applicant refuses to evaluate the feasibility of co-location within the applicant's search ring and provide the sworn statement as described under a previous subsection. And that sworn statement is an explanation as to why the applicant chose the proposed location and why the applicant did not choose co-location, including a sworn statement from an individual who has responsibility over the placement of the mobile service support structure, attesting that co-location would not result in the same functionality, coverage, and capacity, it's technically infeasible, or is economically burdensome to the mobile service provider. So I would say that in terms of a specific calling out in the state statute as to a basis by a municipality to disapprove of an application is just that. It is laid out to say that if there is a refusal to evaluate the feasibility of co-location and the sworn statement that is required hasn't been provided, that that would be a basis. So to that end, in terms of laying out options to the council, I would strongly encourage you to consider specific findings. The statute says substantial evidence which supports the decision. So to that extent, I would say we need finding specific reasons to support any denial. This isn't a great spot to be in terms of all the comments that we've heard, but I would just reiterate, not meaning to belabor it, Mayor, but those traditional schemes that we have in terms of regulatory authority for a municipality, height. Prior to the change in the law, we had some say-so. Presently, we can't use any height considerations to regulate. We are limited. There are two specific carve-outs in the statute that say we cannot disapprove of an application based solely on the height of a proposed structure. In addition to that, the statute specifically says we cannot limit the height of the structure to fewer than 200 feet. As far as aesthetics, we've talked about the fact that we can't disapprove of an application based solely on what might be aesthetic concerns. I think the mayor alluded to painting a tower or having something that might blend in with the landscape a little bit better. And then the location. We've heard it, we've talked about it. We have the provision in the law under statute that says there can't be an ordinance prohibiting the placement of any structure in a particular location in a municipality. That speaks to the fact of if the applicant chose to offer up another site or propose a close secondary location, we haven't heard that tonight, but I think that Alderman Kurkowski's comments trying to probe into whether or not that's a possibility, we haven't heard that. Having said that, we do have in front of us an application that requires some action. So hopefully that's some additional assistance to try to make a decision. So I'd leave it at that.
Thank you. Very well said, Melissa. Steve?
Does co-location mean other towers or co-location with other businesses?
Other, in my opinion, it's other towers.
Other towers,
And we
okay.
discussed that at planning, and I want to say it was the very first meeting that they looked at
Okay.
co-locations, and it wasn't feasible for whatever they were trying to achieve.
Did the sworn statement, we have that?
Doug, I think so. I think Carrie said we had it at the last one. Yes, we do.
Melissa, what was, sorry, do we have a full application that's been submitted and dated?
Yes.
What is
We
it?
received the application on July 7th.
Okay, so we're well past, no, we're not well past, but
Yeah, in there.
we're in there. Close, okay.
And I think maybe Melissa's correct in that we're in a situation in which we don't totally control. And while unfortunate, I think I would certainly offer some deference to U.S. Cellular in this case, because under the state statute, they could locate in a residential area. It's entirely possible. And we'd be facing this same discussion, only amplified. So from the perspective that they are recognizing the geography of the area and making an attempt to make this as unobtrusive as possible, granted it's not going to be no impact. We recognize that there will be impacts, but I think there's at least some deference to the community in where they've attempted to cite that. And, I think it's amplified by the state statute that, I mean, they could, I don't want to give anyone ideas, but certainly if someone wanted to put a cell tower on a residential property, there's nothing that would prohibit that.
Okay. Seeing nothing else, we'll look for a motion on 7.
Thanks, Mayor. I think this whole issue speaks to this kind of the dark side of the business of local government and this unfortunately increasing trend of the state inserting itself into local control decisions and impacting our ability to protect our residents and deal with the local conditions as we see fit. But be it as it may, it is state law. We have very little flexibility, or essentially no flexibility to deal with the situation as it currently stands. So, with that being said, Gail is going to move to approve Ordinance 2865, approving a conditional use permit for 120-foot tall wireless telecommunications monopole and associated equipment on the property at 2330 East Rawson Avenue.
Holman will second.
Roll call.
Alderman Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
No.
Kirkowski.
No.
Lorick.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye. Motion carries 4-2. Next up, we have a consideration of a request by St. Matthew's Congregation to rezone a portion of the property in 9261 South Chicago Road from RS3 Single Family Residential to I1 Institutional, and the property at 9348R South Regency Drive from RS2 Single Family Residential to I1 Institutional. Catherine.
Public hearing number 3 is to consider a request by St. Matthew's Congregation to rezone a portion of the property at 9261 South Chicago Road from RS3 Single Family Residential to I1 Institutional, and for the property at 9348 RS South Regency Drive from RS2 Single Family Residential to I1 Institutional. Applicant is St. Matthew Congregation. Property owner is St. Matthew Congregation and Parish. There follows the legal description. Date of notice is July 27th, 2017.
So thanks again. At their July 25th meeting, the Plan Commission did recommend Common Council approval of rezoning a portion of the St. Matthews property at 9261 South Chicago Road from RS3 Single Family Residential to I1 Institutional, as well as the property at 9348R South Regency Drive. And although it has got a Regency Drive address, it's on the west end of the St. Matthews property. It's a remnant parcel to the I1 designation as well. So future use of the property is related to the existing institutional uses, including possible expansion of the parking lot and/or cemetery, although no plans have been submitted for either potential project. Rezoning of the properties to I-1 does recognize, the continued use of these properties for institutional purposes. Plan Commission has recognized that and have recommended to the council that the rezoning be approved after the public hearing. Again, any questions or comments, please fill out an appearance form. Once your name is called, please proceed to the podium to address your comments or questions to the common council. This public hearing is now open.
Thank you, Doug. As Doug said, I will make 3 calls. First call. Second call. Third and final call. Okay, we will close the public hearing and we'll move on for consideration of the ordinance 2866. We'll open it up for questions from the council, comments. Anything from the 4th District, Mike?
Doug, that little triangular piece there on the western end, I know it says in here there are no plans right away, but later on, could that, I mean, the cemetery is joining that piece right now. Okay. No, that wouldn't allow a cemetery to go on.
You know, I'd have to research the rules we got with respect to cemeteries. I know they're a little bit different. So I don't want to give you an answer that's not totally researched. But I think certainly that the fact that it would be its own institutional would be a precursor to a possible use of that for our cemetery, subject to whatever regulations are in place for that.
I think that's the last thing people would want to see there is a cemetery right on that larger parcel there. I mean, I can understand the other one adjoins the existing cemetery. Is there anything we can do at this level to separate the use, or would that come later on?
You know, at this, again, I'm not familiar with the specific rules regarding the siting of cemeteries. So I would not offer you any advice to that in that regard at this point in time.
Did that question come up at the Plan Commission?
No, it didn't, and we weren't aware it was a cemetery, and I wish I would have been more familiar with it.
That is the existing cemetery where that triangular piece is right there.
Yeah, we never brought that up. Please. Name and address, please.
Mike Kuick,
on-
9267 South Annette. I am the trustee treasurer for St. Matthews. That land has been deeded to St. Matthews, and it has been quitclaimed to us twice. The last version was the power company is planning on replacing that gas line. So that line is totally useless, what you call remnant. It's not connected to the cemetery. It's connected to land adjacent to the cemetery. We are going to come to the Planning Commission sometime in the future to ask to review some potential expansion of our cemetery, but we can't do anything until we get an approved certified map. Right now, we're in the process of trying to get the utility easements put on that map. Our future plans call for some expansion towards that triangle piece of land, but I believe the restrictions of the quitclaim from the power company prevent us from building on that specific piece of land. We could probably put an access road or something there, but we cannot put a structure on there.
And the property to the east, in all likelihood, would be parking, extra parking?
I think we have sufficient parking, but we're looking at putting what do they call it, a columbarium, where they put urns. We're looking at something like that. So we'd have to have an access road back there, but again, we can't do anything. We can't even approach the Planning Commission until our map is certified. We have a company that we have negotiated with that will come up with some plans, but again, we're waiting for the map.
Okay, that property there borders the existing access to the cemetery, right? Asphalt road that goes back there?
No, it's,
Residential?
we're talking the triangle, right?
No.
Oh, the other property? Yeah, that is the old Rogowski house. We want the back half of that. We've got a barn on there, we're using it for storage. So all we want to do is, we're trying to sell that, we want to sell the house again. We can't sell a house till the map is certified because the surveyors won't put the stakes in.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Okay.
Questions? All set?
I'm gonna
Anybody
ma-
else? Oh, go ahead, Mike.
I'm going to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 2866, an ordinance to rezone a portion of the property at 9261 South Chicago Road from RS3 Single Family Residential to I-1 Institutional, and the property at 9348 RS Regency Drive from RS2 Single Family Residential to I-1 Institutional.
Dukenyak, second.
Roll call.
Alderman Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorick.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
New business. Item 10 is to concur with the mayor's appointment of Kelly Prodzik to the Celebrations Commission. Questions, comments? Motion?
Yeah, I'll move to concur with the mayor's appointment for Kelly J. Prodzik, 8140 South of White Oak Drive, to the Celebrations Committee for a 3-year term to expire May of 2020.
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call.
Alderman Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorick.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
We're going to exercise and take a little bit of privilege here. We're going to move item 19 next before we do 11. And that's to consider a resolution of approving a certified survey map for the properties at 3607 East Fitzsimmons and 128 South Hillview. So if you guys could just kind of move ahead on that one, and the applicant, come on up. We have a request to hold this item. Is that correct?
Yeah, unfortunately,
Name and address was.
Wesley Schaefer. Address of the property is 3607 East Fitzsimmons. My current address is 4811 Tabor Road, Caledonia, 43443. I don't know.
Pressure's
Just
on.
move there. So, unfortunately, getting the wetland delineation completed in order to combine those parcels, it's looking like it's going to be impossible to do this year. So I'm going to have to go and do my original plan to cut into the road. It's going to cost about $15,000 extra, but combining those parcels at this point, because of timing, it's really not going to do any good. And like I said, the delineators are pretty much scheduled through the end of the year, and we won't be able to meet that deadline.
I'm going to defer to the city attorney. I thought it was going to be a hold for another meeting, but it almost sounds like a withdrawal.
If that's possible for a withdrawal, I mean, otherwise I could talk to the planning commission about, or
Oh, we kind of got him. We got the head planner here a little bit.
I'm just wondering, given this,
Timing question, right? And so,
Yeah.
The fact of it is, if I might, Mayor, sorry
Yes,
about
go
that.
ahead, please.
You have a year from the date of approval by the Plan Commission to have that CSM recorded. However, do you have any more particular insight as to timing then for the delineation, or are you indicating that at this point you're looking at a different path? And I don't mean to presuppose an answer other than from our perspective, I would say procedurally for the council, it's probably a matter of we've taken a number of steps to try to address your request from the city, as we should. So Plan Commission recommendation, we're here before council tonight, so my thought would be it would probably be acceptable to hold the matter, but for a period of time, probably contemplated a 2 weeks or 30 days to the next meeting, the first meeting in October, perhaps. Point being, just having gone through these pieces, and then if something should arise where perhaps the wetland delineation does not or excuse me, the alternative to the wetland delineation does not bear out perhaps the way you were anticipating.
Okay, so just wait or table it and then,
I just put that out there in terms of trying to put some parameters around it, and, you know, I'd look to our Director of Community Development as well. And
I'm thinking when would you possibly pull your building permits for the house if you, let's just assume for the moment that the city would entertain requiring that wetland delineation before building permits? And not prior to recording? Because our stated interest is, we obviously don't want you putting a house or putting a roadway or putting in utility lines in the middle of a wetland. And I think we can accomplish that same thing by requiring that prior to building permit, which gets you to do the land division. And if you're reasonably certain that where you're building the house is not in a wetland, I think that may be a way of moving this forward without, without essentially costing you a year on this thing.
If I recall from Plan Commission, the wetland delineation had to do with the, where we were getting the water from to the property. So if they're not gonna go that route, then they're gonna go back out and take the water from the road, coming off the road. Is that what you were thinking about?
so there's no wetland anywhere close to where we'd be running the laterals. And
But it would have been, had you gone through the property?
nope, there's no wetlands anywhere close. I mean, it's the far north end of the property, far south end of the property. This was just like a formality doing the wetland delineation. Unfortunately, the water sewer contractor needs to run those laterals starting this week and next week. And you cannot cross property lines even if they're your own property lines. So with that, we have to go a different route just for legalities, because we won't be able to get, even trying to record the land combination without the wetland delineation, I don't know if Milwaukee County would be able to move within the next 2 weeks to accomplish that without breaking state statute. So I can go a different route, it's just gonna be more expensive.
Looks like you got somebody that wants to say something behind you.
To try and help out where I can. I've not been supremely involved in this, but I
Mike,
am familiar with the area. Oh,
identify.
sorry, Mike Sullivan, Water and Sewer, City's Water and Sewer Utility. I think the issue is, you're correct, you can't run a lateral across someone else's property, even if it's your own, or across another property. But I think if there's assurances that that's going to be one property, that resolves the issue. I mean, we don't want to stand in the way, and certainly don't want you to spend another $15,000, my goodness. So perhaps the approval, or maybe it's the building permit, but something could be triggered that occupancy could not be granted until the property is assembled into one property. So you could put it in now, sort of non-conforming, but ultimately by the time you take occupancy or building permit or whatever the trigger is, then it would be conforming. That
Without speaking towards the utilities rules or the PSC's rules for that, I wouldn't I mean, if the alternative that I would suggest would be prior to the issuance of building permits to have that wetland delineation. Do you need a building permit to do the water and sewer, Mike?
Are we heard at all by waiting 2 weeks and
No,
allowing the applicant to
that-
determine his course of action and then bringing it back then as
That's
opposed
the
to?
discussion.
From what I heard, though, I think he's hurt because he needs the water and sewer lateral. Contractor has to start this week or next week. He's got to have
He needs to tell him which side to
he needs
start
have a
from.
path- Yeah, he needs to have a path going forward.
That's a big roll of the dice. But I mean, if there's assurances, again, whether it's occupancy or, well, the building permits will have to be issued before he runs it. So that don't work.
Again, I cannot make any assurances as to the presence or lack of presence of wetlands.
Correct.
But based on the information that we have, it does not appear that the areas that are impacted have wetland indicators on them.
Yeah,
You know what? I don't want to risk it. I'm gonna run it a different way, the more expensive way, just because I could see this turning into a very expensive nightmare on the other end.
I don't know, where's the house located? Can you take it up to the property line? Take it up to the property line on what is yours and not in a plotted subdivision until you get that done? Or are we still, does he still need a delineation on his own land?
If you're doing the CSM, yes, you need that at some point.
Wouldn't he need it going out to the road just as well?
The whole property.
How's he gonna run it either way? You won't have it either way.
If I don't combine the parcels, I don't need the delineation.
That's
Oh,
absolutely, yeah.
okay. Thank you for clearing that up.
So that would help his cause if we didn't do the CSM, because then he's not combining the properties. So if he withdraws, right, basically?
But it's just a timing thing. I'm cool with withdrawing it. It sucks, but I got to get occupancy.
And that's your
Yeah,
decision.
you need a permanent address apparently there.
Applicant's call.
I was just going to say
Yeah.
something.
No, I'm interested.
Up to Mr. Schaefer, I would just say procedurally, not to presuppose any answer or direction, but time is of the essence is what we're hearing. So if it's not putting words in your mouth, a withdrawal of the request for the certified survey map to combine the outlot from the subdivision with your other parcel, that's one thing. If it's, I'm going to preserve where I am, the council could entertain a motion to hold for 2 to 4 weeks, which doesn't seem to answer your present question. The options I would submit are in the applicant's court, unless it's simply a request to consider what's before the council tonight.
Oh, you said your contractor with your lateral has got some kind of time frame. That seems like it. What's the deal with that?
They're very busy. I put in the application to the planning commission back in early June. I was hoping I was going to be on the planning commission meeting earlier. So it didn't get there, and that's where the time frame was. Now, because I'm behind the 8 ball, I didn't know about the wetland delineation and how booked up they were. That changed everything.
So the lateral contractor's got a scheduling issue?
Yep.
And you're set on who you're gonna use, or?
Yeah, it's a big job. He has a very small window. This was the only window he can get me in. If we pass that window, he might be able to get me in at the end of the season, but I'm risking the freezing weather, and he won't work during freezing weather. I don't think any of them do. So
That's your call.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I'm cool with, can we, I have a feeling I'm going to run the laterals. I'm going to run the laterals the expensive way. And if we just table, is that the correct term? Table
Hold it.
the land division till later, and then if there's any benefit to combining them, then we can do it. Otherwise, at that point, I would ask for a withdrawal. Does that sound?
I think you can certainly do that, but rather than an indefinite hold, I think we wanted to hold it to a date certain.
Subject to council approval.
Yeah, maybe October 3rd.
Okay.
How's that? That's 2 weeks, a month out? 2 meetings out. We moved you up to get him out of here. I mean,
He's got to go to the bathroom.
I know, he was looking impatient, so.
So it would be a motion to hold resolution number 11850090517, approving a certified survey map for Wesley Schaefer for the properties at 3607 East Fitzsimmons Road and 10028 South Hillview Avenue to the October 3rd, 2017 Common Council meeting.
Holman will make that motion as stated by the city attorney.
Kuzikowski will second.
Roll call.
Alderman Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Thank you for allowing that to be moved up. It looked like
Timing was perfect.
he had a little one there that needed to go, so. Back to 11, consideration of a resolution accepting our liability insurance.
I can take that one. This one will hopefully be a little more run-of-the-mill and a little more lineal in fashion. But what's before you, the council this evening, is basically a renewal for a new policy term for our CIVMIC insurance. And when you look at the spate of insurances that the city provides, of course you have your personnel-related, your health, your dental, your life insurance. And then you have your the realm of the property and casualty, which is made up of your property insurance, your public officials liability insurance, and then your workers' compensation insurance. And what's before the council tonight is the renewal for those liability insurances, as stated in the coverage in the annual premium sheet that's in your packet: general liability, auto liability, excess liability, public officials liability, and law enforcement liability. We've been partnered with CIVMIC for many years. CIVMIC is a great partner in that they have 49 other municipal partners, and it is just that. It's a partnership that we have, and we've had we have a great value proposition with CIVMIC in terms of all of the additional training and other types of guidance that the company, our partner gives us throughout the year. We also have taken a significant advantage of their safety training from a workers' comp standpoint, and we've maximized grant funding up to the tune of about $7,000 each of the past several years for various programs, safety training wise. So with that, barring any questions, the financial implications of the policy renewal are included in your packet. It's basically a 3-year term, and it's increasing about $10,100 total over the course of that policy term. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the council may have, if there are any.
Anyone? Seeing none? Motion.
I'll move to approve resolution 11852-090517, accepting the liability insurance proposal dated June 30, 2017 from Cities and Villages Mutual Insurance Company and agreeing to continue membership in CIVMIC for policy years 2018 through 2020 based upon guaranteed premium specific for these years.
Guzekowski, second.
Roll call.
Alderman Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Next, we have consideration of a resolution approving an agreement of record or declaration between the City of Oak Creek and One West Drexel for Drexel Town Square in the 2nd District. Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to speak to the next two items kind of in tandem because they are related, and hopefully we can expedite the discussion a little bit that way. What happened earlier this summer in June 20th meeting, I believe, the council approved a maintenance services agreement with Drexel Town Square Owners Association that more or less identified the services that the city would provide Drexel Town Square and the reimbursement for those public services on an annual basis, actually quarterly within those years, a 5-year term with an automatic renewal. What has occurred since is it was identified that the city itself is not a party to the declarations, covenants, conditions, restrictions of Drexel Town Square that the other Drexel Town Square owners subject themselves to. So we are cleaning up a little bit after the parade here and placing those covenants on the City Hall Library property. And that's important that we do that for many reasons, but most importantly, always having a voice on that Owners Association board to preserve the fact that we are reimbursed for those municipal services that are granted to or provided to Drexel Town Square, just to name probably the most significant one, but also there's equitability and other arguments that can be made of why that's important that we have those covenants on our own property, but most importantly, making sure we have representation as the city on that Owners Association board. So with that, again, to kind of the interrelated components of these next two, placing the covenants on the City Hall Library property, and in turn, on the second item, making sure that the city is not coming out, I guess I'll put it as a net payer on those fees, those annual assessments that are on all of the other properties, but that instead of being a payer and impacting our general fund with those fees, which, you know, it's $10,000 plus or minus, but making sure that it's memorialized that those fees that the city would otherwise pay were a part and parcel of the maintenance services agreement and the fees that the owners association pays the city annually.
Questions? Comments? Nothing? Enough easy, Andrew. Okay, motion.
Clerk will move that the council adopt resolution number 11854-090517, approving the agreement to record declaration between the city of Oak Creek and One West Drexel LLC for Drexel Town Square.
Kirkowski, second.
Roll call.
Alderman Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
13 is a follow-up, as Andrew said, for amended services with the agreement between Drexel Town Square Owner Association and the City of Oak Creek for Drexel Town Square. Andrew, anything more on that one? Nope. Questions? Comments? Motion.
Clerk will move that the council adopt resolution number 11855-090517, approving the amended services agreement between Drexel Town Square Owners Association, Inc. and the City of Oak Creek for Drexel Town Square.
Kirkowski, second.
Roll call.
Alderman Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Item 14 is our vendor summary report. For questions, who gets them tonight? Oh, Bridget? Andrew? Doug? Mike?
Mike, just for.
We do have a couple of contractors' payments, so
Yeah.
I could.
You could probably shed a
talk
little light on,
those.
we're making a payment for Drexel Avenue traffic signals, and they lay on the ground and they taunt us, so maybe you can just shed a little light on what the delay is, and you can maybe appease some people and.
Well, we've learned some lessons with this project, the way we structured the contract completion dates and when we allowed them to start. And what we did was the contract was awarded, and we have learned from past projects that there is a long lead time on ordering materials for traffic signal projects. The big model tube arms, the anchor bolts, which need to go through extensive testing to support these arms. And so the contractor, we had the pre-construction meeting, and they ordered their materials, and then they broke ground. And they have somewhat of an abundance of time, and we've gone extensive periods. They come in, they do some work, and then they're gone for a while. So our next project, we will have starting and completion dates where, okay, you've been awarded the contract, you've signed the contract, go ahead, you order your materials. That means from 7 weeks from today, you can break ground, but not before that, because we would find ourselves in this situation. So that's what's happening with that.
So has the contractor just got scheduling issues, or are they waiting on some equipment?
They've got a subcontractor that has left town and is working elsewhere. I'm told that they were going to be back actually last week to finish up, and they haven't. And we're still holding out hope that we will see them this week, finishing up the sidewalk on the outsides and then getting to the inside lanes. And then once they have that, they should be able to wrap it up fairly rapidly.
Yeah, because we're unnecessarily hindering traffic at this point for
Yes.
extended period of time, so,
Yes.
cool.
Mayor, I just want to thank Mike for responding to some constituent complaints about that. They managed to get the westbound side opened up, moving the barrels and stuff, and they couldn't do anything with east side because there's a big pile of gravel there. But thanks for taking care of that over the holiday weekend.
Sure.
Anybody else? Motion.
Okay, we'll move to approve the vendor summary report in the amount of $924,173.08.
Guzekowski, will second.
Roll call.
Alderman Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Item 15 is our summarized treasurer reports. Informational. Andrew, anybody?
Dan, just
Yeah, got any questions?
Barb made note of the fact that we receive some payments that are, I think, to be used over the course of the year, where they kind of clumped up here this month. So the LGIP fund is higher than it typically is.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, motion. Oh, sorry, informational. Moving on, police. Consider a motion for a proposed annual agreement for the school resource officer. Want to come on up, Steve?
Steve Anderson, Police Chief, Oak Creek. It's basically the same contract we've had since '99 with two changes. The one change for the wages has a caveat because it's a negotiation year. For the second payment, there's language in there that that rate could adjust for the second half. And the second change in this was the school agreed to compensate us for 50% of our overtime as it relates to SRO duties. That was in one of the very first contracts that we had, and it was removed after that, after a year or two. I'm not sure why, but the school district worked very well. We're very willing to compensate us for overtime specific to the SRO duties.
Questions for Chief Anderson? Greg?
I just have a quick question. It notes in here that in the agreement, the resource officers are at Oak Creek High School and Oak Creek East and West Middle Schools. Is there any time allocated to the grade schools?
The middle school SRO tries to, but quite frankly, with the two middle schools, that SRO is probably as busy as the high school one. So they both try to get to the schools. Our middle school SRO is Officer Rommel. She tries to work with the elementary schools when she can, but it's not regular visits.
Anything else?
Steve, just a quick question, Dan. Sorry.
Yeah.
Is the workman's comp, the way that the city maintains all workman's comp liability, is that all that typically the case with the SRO deals?
Yep, they're completely our employees. If something happens, they fall under our control for that.
Else, motion.
Dukenyak will move to approve the proposed annual agreement for school resource officer services for the 2017-18 school year.
Kirkowski will second.
Roll call.
Alderman Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Oops, excuse me.
Aye.
Tillman.
Aye.
Community development. We have consideration to authorize staff.
This one, Dan.
Missed one,
Oh, I
Dan.
did. Health. I'm sorry, that's a big one. Consider a motion to endorse the restructuring of the health department in accordance with the city administrator's memo dated August 24th, 2017, and to direct the city administrator to bring back an interagency agreement related to certain sanitarian functions for council consideration within 60 days. I'm going to turn that over to Andrew.
Thanks, Mayor. I would have been okay if you would have missed that one, but we would have just had to bring it back next meeting. So I think it's important to recount a long period of assessment that the city has undertaken with the health department here. And it dates back to the spring of 2016 when our former community public health officer retired. We've been analyzing the health department and the services provided therein, as well as the staffing model for that. And I think the period of assessment was greatly hindered by, obviously we'd like to move a little faster than that, but greatly hindered by the fact that we, in that time, changed city administrators, in that time, changed mayors. So I think the health department staff themselves are happy we're moving in a direction finally. So I thought that it's important to bring back that history because we did look at things with the staffing, like joining the Environmental Health Consortium to enhance our sanitarian functions. That consortium consists of St. Francis, South Milwaukee, Cudahy, and what would have been Oak Creek. The Board of Health and the city decided to move away from that last summer. And then we actually posted for our own public health officer position in, probably late last year. I want to say November, but we determined that we wanted to continue discussions with the city of South Milwaukee for a potential joint health department. So what we did was we engaged the Public Policy Forum to produce a study to look at what that joint health department might look like, including, again, taking a look at the Environmental Health Consortium as an option for some of our sanitarian capacity we wanted. But in the end, after 3 to 4 months of looking at that Public Policy Forum analysis, reviewing the recommendations contained therein, and talking about the Public Policy Forum study with the decision makers of the community, we decided that it best on many levels and for many reasons that the city of Oak Creek go on its own and look at how we may right size and shift resources within the department and the functions of the department to hopefully better suit our needs moving forward from a service level, and that impacts staffing. I know that the council is familiar with these concepts. I know the personnel committee is very familiar with these concepts, but the recommendations I'm putting forward tonight include 5 items total, and I just want to just summarize those briefly. The first one is an elimination of 1 vacant part-time clerical position, which has been vacant since October of 14. The second recommendation is a reduction of total part-time public health nursing hours down to 24 hours per week. We have 1 extremely irregular part-time employee that would impact, and we have 1 now vacant position that was budgeted at 20 hours a week, but was considered a temporary position that would impact. We have number 3, returning and really right-sizing the administrative functions of what's currently being handled by our deputy health officer, taking those administrative functions, putting those on the lap of the new public health officer, who will be starting with the city hopefully in mid-October, and really then rededicating some of that capacity back to the public health nursing team. Number 4, probably the most impactful from a structural standpoint, is removal of what I will call the establishment licensure program, for which the city is an agent of the state for certain environmental health functions, specifically the sanitarian functions of inspecting and licensing retail food, recreational programming establishments, hotels, motels, campgrounds, and I'm forgetting a couple of them, but I know you're familiar with the full gamut there. Really moving that function from where it traditionally lies, the health department, to the inspections department. And what we found through discussions and just a lot of discussion with the staff is there's a lot of more overlap. It makes more sense from a procedural standpoint, from a process standpoint, that those have the oversight and the supervision of the inspections department supervisor. So there's more to that, and we can get into that if you'd like. But we've seemingly picked a direction where that should be housed, and I'm comfortable with that. And then kind of in addition to number 4, and really why we're kind of tweaking the resources within the health department, we have, through our discussions, through the discussions at personnel and the Board of Health, determined that we have some needs to fulfill in order to get ourselves back to what I would consider to be a compliance, a compliance plateau with our establishment licensure programming. We've had a period of time where we made sure we made a stop at every location in the city, and as it comes with being an agent of the state, we need to do an even more thorough job with those visits, those licensure, visitation and the inspections of specifically the retail food, but there's others that go along into that. So we want to bolster that. And talking with many of you and talking with the personnel committee, that's a service, that's a public health service that will touch every resident in the city of Oak Creek and probably multiple times. If you ever go out and dine at a restaurant, if you ever have friends or yourself or friends or family stay at a hotel, motel, that is one service the health department provides that touches all of the taxpayers and residents of Oak Creek. So that's the prioritization. That's why there's an emphasis of value on that service. We want to direct some resources, some additional resources that we historically have not had to those functions. Maybe to round out this overview, I think it's important to point out that this is a redirection of resources. It's not necessarily a punitive thing. It's just determining and a value judgment being made of we're lacking here in one area, the sanitarian functions, and local government right now is such that there's not a lot of additional resources via the levy and other levy limit and expenditure constraints that we have, where the priority for new dollars coming into the city every year would have been directed to the health department. So that focuses the lens on redirecting resources within the department. So with that said, I would also maybe just end on, it was a strategic action plan item to, as quoted in the memorandum, evaluate, right size, and better align the city organization. And this is exactly what we mean by that. This is just one department. We'll take a look at other departments and other services we provide, maybe that we haven't looked at in a while, just to make sure that they're fitting today's needs and today's dollars, if you will. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the council may have. But I would like to go in this direction after careful consideration. The one remnant component of this that we would need, and you see it's included in the motion, is in order to affect the change of supervisory responsibilities of the sanitarian functions or certain sanitarian functions, we would need to execute an interagency agreement between the health department and the inspections division. And that will have to be kind of blessed by the state agencies for which we're an agent of the state. So, which again, contained in the memo. With that, I'd again be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions? Mike?
Andrew, I don't know how much in depth you want to get into this, but August 23rd, that meeting you had with the staff, how did that go? Certainly some pointed questions. At that point, individual impacts weren't really known. I didn't share the contents of the memo. I just shared generally what would be impactful on a department basis. A lot of questions revolved around the move of the sanitarian functions and what that looks like, and who's various comfort levels with that in terms of what ifs. And as I shared with the staff, and I'll share with the council tonight, certainly there's going to be some questions implementing this that, or maybe granular details that we have to sort out. We don't know exactly what requirements the state would have with that interagency agreement, as one example. But generally what I'm looking at, hopefully the council doing tonight is endorsing the action plan. And of course, if issues are encountered, implementing it. If dollars change or certain resources can't be found, then we'll stop back and ensure that you're comfortable with a tweak to this plan. In regard to point number 5, how does the actual hours that are going to be, if we add up to 20? How do we vet that? Does that get vetted through the Board of Health, personnel, budget time? How does that play out?
One more time, I'm sorry.
The additional hours for the sanitarian
function. We touched on this just a little bit at the personnel committee meeting, Mike, and what what we're hopeful to do is with the kind of the calculation of what we could find within the existing resources to put up to a maximum amount of 20 hours towards the sanitarian functions. And it goes to what I just said, if we can't fulfill those 20 hours, and maybe it's, we find an individual who wants to work 12 hours and another who can work 4, or however we piece that together, we would bring that back to the personnel committee with, some sort of a personnel action request form and discuss, why we fell short or where additional, opportunities may exist, that we hadn't thought of. I know looking at temporary employees or limited term employees has been discussed. And what I wanted to be sure we did not do was leap to a conclusion that we needed a full-time equivalent position in the sanitarian function. If we determine in a period of years, a period of time for that matter, that we as a community have not reached that maintenance plateau with this establishment licensure, we can take a leap to the additional resources that may or may not be identified that we need. This is more of an incremental step to say, we're not ready to go there yet because we think that directing some resources to this in an interim fashion, maybe we'll get back on top and not have to do second and third inspections to bring really the education that we need to these business owners that comes along with these programs.
Yeah, I suggested in personnel that we look to the state maybe for some part-time help, but I did some research on it and that doesn't seem to be an option. The state wants to add 20 new positions this year and none of those are going to be part-time. They want to get rid of all their part-time people. They want to go to full-time. So I think the state would be an option that would be out. Okay. That's it. That's all I've got.
Just a general comment, Dan, if you want to take them
Yeah,
up.
go ahead.
I think overall, I think this plan is directly in line with kind of our vision for, as we went through our strategic planning process and actually went through Andrew's hiring, the priorities for the city to focus on kind of the organization as a whole from a global level, whether or not it made sense to be utilizing and continue to utilize the staffing and the budgetary kind of constraints we had put ourselves in. So I think this is directly in line with rationalizing and streamlining our processes and making sure that the organization as a whole continues to evolve as the city continues to evolve. So I appreciate Andrew's. I know it's been a lot of hard work and a lot of study and interaction with staff and outside agencies. So and especially as we have a new we're wrapping up the process for hiring a new community health officer to get this strategic kind of overlay onto that organization and onto our health department. I think is important, and to clarify the internal structure is going to be very handy in terms of making sure that everyone knows where they stand in terms of responsibilities, who they're accountable for, and who they're accountable to. So I appreciate Andrew's hard work on this and endorse it wholeheartedly.
Sorry, Mayor, if I might jump in. I know we're in the aldermanic comment phase, but I think it's important. You sparked my memory, Alderman Gale. I actually, we had an exceptional cast of applicants for our community public health officer. We have extended a verbal offer. We're doing some due diligence, and I actually did meet one-on-one with that individual to share the contents of this. So she had the opportunity and had the knowledge of kind of the discussions going on as she was considering with her family, whether this was the right position for her. And seemingly she didn't get scared off, so that'd be a great. She will be a great addition, and I think we're looking at a September 19th confirmation for her, if all things go well.
Well, that's I think very strategic in terms of how we've been kind of trying to look at the organization. We'll continue to do this for the entire organization as we see fit, and especially given the funding constraints at the state level. And these are things and discussions we're going to have to continue to have as we move forward. So,
Steve?
Just a couple of comments as a member of the Board of Health. I can tell you that in years past, there was a sense of feeling that, I can be corrected if I'm wrong, that there was a thought process of eliminating the Board of Health or merging all the functions with other communities, which led to that in Health Consortium, which I think most of us thought was dead on arrival because of some of the conditions that Oak Creek was going to be faced with. So the report that we had that was generated, public policy forum, and then the subsequent work that's been done by the city administrator, I think it goes to show that we really want, need, and support our own health department. And while there might have been some questions about moving the sanitarian over to inspections and keeping her over in the health department, I know that she does, as you all might know, provide. If you've ever attended a board of health meeting, you'll know that she supplies reports to the board of health, and it's my understanding that moving her over to inspections, the interagency agreement, the state approval, those reports will still get passed on to the health department for them to do what they need to do. But it just to me, it seems so logical to do that because, especially with all the new construction, I mean, she's out there with the inspectors, or she's reporting to the inspectors, or they're giving her information, she's giving them. It just seemed like a natural fit that they all kind of come under the same umbrella and yet still share her required information with the health department. So it just seemed like a logical approach.
Anyone else? No? It was a long process. I kind of came in the middle of it. Former Mayor Scafidi had initiated the look-in with South Milwaukee, and we were actually borrowing our health officer from South Milwaukee under contract. So we really had to move somewhere along the line. South Milwaukee themselves took a long look at it, and they had some issues with it too. It's unfortunate that the marriage didn't work in better regards for both cities at this time. But again, we're looking at a lot of options. Everybody's kind of set it. We're sharing services where possible, whether in dispatch or IT. We'll just continue to look. It's really an efficiency thing. We're just kind of moving people around and dollars around, but hopefully we'll be more efficient in the long run for it. So do support it. So with that, seeing no more discussion, go to a motion.
Kirkowski will make a motion that the council endorse the restructuring of the health department in accordance with the city administrator's memo dated August 24, 2017, and to direct the city administrator to bring back an interagency agreement related to certain sanitarian functions for council consideration within 60 days.
Oracle second.
Roll call.
Alderman Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorick.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Community development, consideration of a motion to authorize staff to request proposals for an update to the city's comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance. Doug?
Thanks. So 1995, I think words like Uber or Airbnb or even social media were even thought of at that point in time. Ask yourselves, and I won't ask Andrew where he was, but world's a very different place, isn't it? Yet that was the last time we had a major update and rewrite of our zoning code. And certainly a lot has changed since then. 2002, city had its last update of its comprehensive plan. And we've seen the changes that have gone through, and obviously we've had some amendments to that and some amendments to our zoning code. But to be a high-performing organization, we need to really think more strategically about our regulating documents. And quite frankly, our zoning code and our comprehensive plan right now is not achieving the things we needed to achieve. Give you an example of that. Our classifications and our permitted uses, we allow as permitted use in our commercial districts, videotape sales and rental. How many videotape sales and rental places do you think have opened up in the last 2 decades? By the same token, we allow buttons and miscellaneous notions as permitted use in our manufacturing zoning districts. It just goes to show you some of the absurdities that have accumulated over time. And rather than nip at the edges of this thing, I think that it would be a much better service to this community if we did a major rewrite incorporating some of the more modern notions with respect to how one regulates zoning and not being as prescriptive about manufacturing buttons and related notions, but certainly tying it into what they call a NAICS code, which allows for more efficient review and approval and regulation of industries without having to list every single one in your zoning code. So I hope you would agree with that. It's potentially a big number. I'm not denying that. Last year, the council saw fit to authorize a CIP item for the update to the comprehensive plan, or was it the zoning code? One of those two. And we internally had discussed, well, what is really the proper sequencing of that? We could have done an update to the zoning code, but really the way it should happen is that you do your strategic plan. Strategic plan relates to and governs and informs your comprehensive plan. And zoning is really the last thing that really implements both of those. So we didn't want to take that out of order, and we feel that we have a mechanism in terms of, and actually a very short window in terms of what we're able to do with some of the revenue that we still can utilize from Fund 31 to make that happen in the next 2 years. And that's not going to be available starting in 2019. So we've got this window, we've got the revenue available to do that, we feel. And one thing we don't have is the staff resources to do it in-house. So I'm hoping that you'll concur and authorize staff to release this request for proposals for both the update to the comprehensive plan as well as a major update to the zoning code. And be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Doug? Comments?
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Mayor. Doug, can you remind me, shed some light on, just so I have a picture of this, where we are? I know we may have issued already the RFP for the Avonshine Master Plan update.
I don't know that we have.
We're looking to, though.
Yes.
From my understanding.
Yes.
Now I saw in the package of materials, I guess for reference materials, is the Park and Open Space Plan. Is there a redo overall for the Park and Open Space Plan that we're contemplating?
Typically, that has to be updated every 5 years to retain our eligibility for DNR grants.
So where are we, and how does that relate to what we potentially are going to try and plan at Avonshine?
The comprehensive plan is more.
Is that?
The Park and Open Space Plan is very prescriptive in terms of projects and implementing that. The Park and Open Space Plan certainly fits into the comprehensive plan, but the comprehensive plan really goes beyond that, and in terms of land uses.
Whoever's running this can work around or what's going on underneath that in terms of our park planning.
Sure.
All right, and then the other question I had is on our we've discussed this internally in terms of what we intend to do with the 27th Street overlay district issue. Should that be fixed before we do this, or does that?
Well, I guess it all depends what you mean by fixing it.
But it seems like we should have some clarity on that for someone who's going to try and study that for us.
And I think that would be part of that process as well.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, one of the things that we had discussed, Doug, and maybe Ken's alluding to it a little bit, was parlaying the communication, or I should say the public participation, and making sure we don't have, when we're looking at these guidance documents, a public participation process for the comp plan, a public participation process for the zoning code for what we need, which is not as much as the others, a public participation process for the CORP, or the Comprehensive Outdoor Rec Plan, and then a public participation process for Avonshine. And we had talked about how we were going to kind of parlay and utilize an instrument that would satisfy the required public participation elements of those guidance documents, as that's a significant driver of costs. Depending on how in depth you have a survey instrument, or maybe it's just online engagement, really informs the budget for what the overall project cost would be. So maybe you could shed some light on your thoughts on how we can. We have a recreation element to our comp plan, so how can we parlay, those types of things into one, maybe not one, but how can we parlay the public participation?
Certainly, as you work with consultants, you kind of see the areas which tend to burn cash pretty quickly, and meetings are one of them. And to the extent that we can utilize technology to accomplish those same goals and probably more effectively accomplish those same goals. And there's always going to be a place for meetings. But we certainly want to be mindful of reaching out to our residents in the manner in which they're most comfortable. And that, we've talked about that forever, whether it's social media or the paper surveys. I mean, one size does not fit all, nor should it. But to the extent that we can kind of merge that awareness of what's happening with city government in terms of rewriting some of our regulatory documents. I mean, honestly, to the outside person, I'm participating in a public participation plan for a zoning code update. I mean, I just want to, get my voice heard with the city. How can I do that? So I think to the general public, it's how to become more involved in the city, and the rest of the mechanics of that we can work out towards our advantage with respect to the cost effectiveness of that.
One other comment, if I could. My previous community, we did these very two updates, and why, and this budget that Doug has put forward isn't necessarily out of line. And why is that? Well, when you haven't done a comprehensive plan update for 15 years, and you haven't done a zoning code update for more than that, they really become rewrites. This is not a small tweaking. Otherwise, the staff would have taken those on. What we're looking at is a much more comprehensive review. We will see very much, definitely related to the zoning code, as Doug alluded to. This is going to look different. It's not just going to be, well, let's eliminate obsolete uses, and we could have done that review maybe over the course of many weeks, months, with the workload of the planning staff. But if you condition yourself or rethink this as a rewrite of our zoning code, building it up from kind of a ground zero, these aren't tweaking around the edges, that lends to what you're looking at in terms of a project budget.
Anybody else? Questions, comment? Okay, my 2 cents, very much needed. I think Andrew hit it right on the head. Got to get up to speed. Doug, just by bringing up the years and the examples, it shows how out of date we really are. We're moving. We're a different city than we were in 1995, and we need to reflect that in these documents. So, support it. All right. Motion.
Bill move to authorize staff to release a request for proposals for an update to the city's comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance.
Guzekowski, second.
Roll call.
Alderman Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Seeing as we got through 19, we're now on to engineering, number 20. Looking for a motion to concur with Traffic and Safety Commission's recommendation to approve a no outlet sign. Anybody from Traffic and Safety want to comment? Bring us up to speed.
Quite honestly, there wasn't a lot of discussion at that meeting. It was just a simple request of a resident or several of the residents of that area because, again, of increased traffic, thinking that they could enter and exit that area and just felt that it was developing into an unsafe traffic situation in that area. So, we gave approval to that with about 2 minutes worth of discussion. And honestly, at that meeting, we only had 2 residents of the area that appeared at the meeting, and those residents weren't in the affected area. They were just wondering what they were given the notice for, really. So it was just for their informational purposes. So neighbors did express a concern. I guess we fielded their concern and questions through phone calls and email communication. But honestly, there weren't many that showed up in support of it at the actual meeting. But we felt it prudent to eliminate a traffic situation in that area to approve the sign.
Okay. Any concerns in the 5th District where it sits, Chris or Ken?
Dan, I didn't hear from anyone, and I know the original application I know is for folks who are concerned about folks driving too fast through these, cul-de-sacs and, dead ends, and then typically, unfortunately, that's your neighbors. Usually the case, so it's, and our folks, I think the traffic engineers will typically tell you more signs really don't have a lot of impact because they kind of get lost in the sight line. People see them for a couple days and then it's just another blur as they go by. So the fact that it's no outlet may have a little more impact. That these are all dead end cul-de-sacs in this neighborhood that may have a little more impact. But it's your neighbors. So you have to have a rapport with your neighbors and tell them, hey, little kids playing around here. Tell your kids to slow down when they're coming home from school.
Okay. Steve?
Mayor, I think my comments are more rhetorical than anything because I had come across a issue in my district where we wanted slow children signs, and engineering said that those signs aren't supported by the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And if you haven't noticed, you go through every residential neighborhood in Franklin, and they have them at the entrance of every one. So my comment to that is it doesn't provide they said the sign doesn't provide a clear message direction to the driver. Well, as I said earlier, and I'll say again tonight, well, if I drive down a street and I see a sign that says slow children, if I don't drive past it and it becomes a blur like Ken said, then mentally I should drive slow because there's children. So
We appreciate your diligence.
yeah, it's one of those things. It's a fight I won't win.
Call your neighbors.
But thank you.
Excellent. Okay, no further discussion. Motion?
Gail will move to concur with the Traffic and Safety Commission's recommendation to approve an installation of no outlet signs on Jessica Circle and Kyle Court.
Dukenyak, second.
Roll call.
Alderman Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Now brings us to the licensing committee. I will turn over items 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28 over to Alderman Kirkowski.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. License Committee met on August 29, 2017. Minutes are attached. Recommendations are as follows. Item 21, Kirkowski will make a motion to deny an operator's license to Kimberly Condelio, N168 W21700, West Main Street, Jackson, for falsification of application and for being a habitual offender.
Gail will second.
Roll call.
Alderman Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
The following items were received after the License Committee met. Tentative recommendations are as follows. Item 22, Kirkowski will make a motion to grant an operator's license to the 15 individuals listed on the agenda. Favorable background reports were received.
Guzekowski, second.
Roll call.
Alderman Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Item 23, Kirkowski will make a motion to grant a transient merchant license to the Window Store Home Improvements, 2706 South 163rd Street, New Berlin, selling home improvement products, and to the two individuals who are salespersons listed on the agenda. Favorable background reports were received.
Guzekowski, second.
Roll call.
Alderman Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
24, Kirkowski will make a motion to grant a change of agent to Megamarts LLC, DBA Pick and Save, number 6862, 8770 South Howell Avenue, from Eric Thomas to Joel E. Van Winkle, 1133 Kilbride Drive, Racine. Favorable background report received.
Dukenyak, second.
Roll call.
Alderman Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
25, Kirkowski will make a motion to grant a Class A combination license to Amanda Ward, agent, Quick Trip, Inc., DBA Quick Trip, number 976, 6300 South 27th Street, formerly known as PDQ, with release of license subject to final sanitarian and building inspections.
Gail will second.
Roll call.
I'm sorry, was that Lorik? Or?
Lorik is fine.
Alderman Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
26, Kirkowski will make a motion to grant a temporary Class B beer license to Kelly Stefanich, agent, St. Matthew Parish School, 9303 South Chicago Road, for an adult field day fundraiser to be held on September 16, 2017.
Dukenyak, second.
Roll call.
Alderman Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
27, Kirkowski will make a motion to grant a temporary Class B beer license to Roland Komorowski, agent, St. Matthew Parish, 9303 and 9329 South Chicago Road, for a parish picnic to be held on September 23, 2017.
Dukenyak, second.
Roll call.
Alderman Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
And item 28, Kirkowski will make a motion to grant a temporary Class B beer license to Mark Zapp, agent, St. Matthew Parish, 9303 South Chicago Road, for St. Matthew's Fish Boils to be held on October 6, 2017, March 23, 2018, and May 11, 2018.
Dukenyak, second.
Roll call.
Alderman Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
That brings us to item 29. It's consideration of a motion to convene in a closed session pursuant to Wisconsin state statutes to discuss the following. A, Section 19.85, Parent 1, Parent E, to discuss the terms of a proposed development agreement, including a TIF incentive grant for the property owned by Woodman's Food Market, Inc., consisting of approximately 4 acres located at 8142 South 6th Street. And B, Section 1985, Parent 1, Parent E, to consider wholesale water supply to the city of Waukesha. President of the Council, Ken Gale.
Thanks, Mayor. Gail, I'll move to convene in a closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State statutes to discuss the following. A, Section 19.85, Sub 1, Sub E, to discuss the terms of a proposed development agreement, including a TIF incentive grant for property owned by Woodman's Food Market, Inc., consisting of approximately 4 acres located at 8142 South 6th Street. And B, Section 19.85, Sub 1, Sub E, to consider a wholesale water supply to the city of Waukesha.
Guzekowski, second.
Roll call.
Alderman Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
We will now convene into closed session, and we will return at the conclusion of it. Motion.
Gail moves to reconvene in open session.
Guzekowski, second.
Roll call.
Alderman Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
We will now consider to take a motion on our closed, excuse me, on our closed session after an explanation by the city administrator.
Thanks. I'll just give a brief overview of key terms for the city's partnership with Zund America, Inc. To bring their North American headquarters to the city of Oak Creek, and more specifically Drexel Town Square on the plus or minus, well, on the 3.39 acres, 3.398 acres south of the Civic Center, on a lot currently owned by Woodman's, which they're currently under contract to purchase. This has been a work in the works for many years. We've had many people efforting this. They've taken their time. The city has taken its time in contemplating the exact precise piece of land that would work, the terms of the deal, overcome some unknown environmental issues with the property that we've partnered on with both the seller, the buyer, meaning Woodman's, Zund, and the city. And key deal terms for this public-private partnership are as follows. The developer, Zund America, Inc., guarantees a minimum assessed value to the tax base to the city of Oak Creek of $5 million as of 1/1/19. That's only at partial build-out. The full valuation for their approximately 50,000 square foot headquarters will be $8 million as of 1/1/2020. I just mentioned the scope of the building is a 50,000 square foot facility serving as their North American headquarters, which encompasses encompasses several components: an office, a showroom, and then some minor warehousing component in the back to house some of their additional inventory. Interesting, and something we've never had in our development agreements before, but it is an important term. This developer has hundreds of guests that come to the city of Oak Creek every year, showing the material and their goods, their machines in their showroom at this very new facility. They're guaranteeing a minimum of 600 hotel room nights in the city of Oak Creek each year, which is really important from, you have the room tax piece of it, but most importantly, the synergies that creates for these businesses in Drexel Town Square as we have a hotel coming into Drexel Town Square. All restaurants get aided by traffic, especially traffic during the week, which is these executive type folks will bring. Another really, I think, creative negotiation that was part of this development agreement was a public-private partnership on parking. So how this works is Zund America will essentially overbuild their parking lot, and the city will contribute to the overbuilding of their parking lot, such that nights, weekends, and during special events, Oak Creek residents, visitors to Oak Creek, have an additional 100 parking spots with which to seek out and use in Drexel Town Square. So that's a really, in this dense urban development that we have, those shared parking relationships are really key, and it's a part of this deal. The city will also provide a land cost contribution to help overcome some of the environmental conditions of the property in the amount of $700,000, not to exceed. And as is always the case with our development agreements, the city has features in its development agreements to protect the city, to protect the taxpayers and residents of Oak Creek. One of those key features being a minimum assessed value, wherein should the developer not achieve the minimum assessed value which the city's contribution was based upon, we would, and we have before, we would send basically a separate bill as a shortfall protection to make up the difference, such that the city would always be made whole as though there were an $8 million land and improvement on this parcel. That's just one of many features of protections in the development agreement, but our big one and one we've used before, so one worth noting. But with that, really excited to have get past this, get the council past this approval, and move on to the kind of the more sexy stuff with the site planning and looking at the architecture and that kind of stuff. So, any questions? If any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
No, just a comment. It was a long, hard negotiation. It will be a great addition to Drexel Town Square in the city of Oak Creek. Andrew covered it all, though. We put some unique features in there that'll benefit the residents. I think this is just an excellent day for Oak Creek. Ken?
Yeah, Danny, just to chime in too, I think kudos, significant effort on Andrew's part, along with Doug, Bridget, Mike Simmons, development staff. Kudos out to Gary Billington, who nursed this idea from years ago, brought it to fruition after a long struggle. Our thanks out, obviously, to the folks at Zund America for the wherewithal to stay with the process after they encountered some things they probably didn't expect along the way, but buying into the vision that is Drexel Town Square with what would be in terms of Oak Creek in southeast Wisconsin, potentially revolutionary architecturally styled building. And in addition to this project, I think we're very happy in the fact that the folks at Woodman saw the value in cooperating and realizing the value of their piece of property. Really a fantastic addition and culmination to a lot of effort.
Nothing else? Motion.
Clerk will move that the council adopt resolution number 11851-090517, approving the tax incremental finance district number 11 finance development agreement by and between the city of Oak Creek and Zund America, Inc.
Kuzikowski, second.
Roll call.
Alderman Kirkowski.
Aye.
Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
And that leads us to adjournment.
Kirkowski make a motion to adjourn.
Kuzikowski, second.
Roll call.
Alderman Lorik.
Aye.
Dukenyak.
Aye.
Toman.
Aye.
Gale.
Aye.
Guzekowski.
Aye.
Kirkowski.
Aye.
Want to thank everybody for staying with us. Particularly, I want to thank our staff, our IT people that stay up late, get everything done for us. In particular, tonight, our city attorney gets special thanks for getting us through some legal stuff there on the cell tower. We didn't expect all those questions coming up, but she had all the answers, no guesses required. Thank you. Good night, everybody.